is Jelking.
Jelking.
Which is like this practice to increase penile length. The safest way for length is a traction device. So you can buy traction devices online. There is what we call small penis anxiety, right? People who really feel body dysmorphia.
Does size matter?
People overestimate what average is. So they think average is like 6 inches erect. Average is more like 5.1 to 5.6 inches depending on the study.
What about girth?
When you have a little more girth, it can stimulate more of the clitoris, right? You're not just focusing on the top, you're also getting the side of it. So it can be helpful, absolutely, to be more girthy.
Hey guys, it's Hink here. And so Rena Malek is probably the most famous urologist maybe in the world right now, especially when it comes to topics that involve men's health. I'm very proud of her. Guys, I've made like at least one, if not two videos of her, and she's actually directly commented on my videos actually and responded to them in some of her podcasts and whatnot. And so today we're going to be discussing this interview that was on the Sean Ryan podcast. As you can tell, there are a lot of spicy topics, so let's get into it. Now guys, before we go any further, please take a second to like this video, hype this video, and if you are not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. All of that very much helps my channel grow. And also guys, let me know how you feel about kind of one of the like quote unquote world experts when it comes to like men's penile health is like a female urologist. I don't know, I'm not saying she's not qualified, but it just kind of rubs me the wrong way that she doesn't have the materials to actually like know what it's like to have one. But let me know what you think. Maybe I'm just an old-fashioned bigot.
Yeah, so there was one on TikTok for a while. There was a lot of people talking about what's called Jelking, which is
Jelking.
Which is like this practice to increase penile length. And so it's like you make an O with OK sign with your finger, and you actually like sort of slowly extend the length of the penis over time. These exercises, stretching exercises, essentially. And so people were like, oh, I did this and I increased my penile length and it was great. And so they were talking about this a lot. And actually, that sounds very safe, right? Like, oh, I'm just stretching. Like, what's the big deal? But sometimes, and you can probably relate this, most men, when you tell them to do something, they don't just do it. They want to do it the best, right? And so they're like you tell someone to do something that might improve their life, they're not going to just do it. They're going to go 10x and do it even more, right? And so there's actually some people who would come into the urologist because they've been doing this, and my colleagues have talked to me, it's even in some published data, people would jelk and they would come in, they would develop erectile dysfunction because they've now damaged their penis, and that's not necessarily reversible. And so it's like there are ways to safely lengthen potentially, but jelking is not one of them.
So guys, here you have it. Yet another urologist, board certified urologist, telling you not to jelk. Okay, I already made my video on the Uro channel guy who also made a video about don't jelk and the dangers behind it, including permanent damage. You guys know that I have been a very prominent voice against jelking in the PE community because I do coaching, especially for injury coaching, through my patreon.com/DocHink. And what I find is that these guys who are injuring themselves doing PE are disproportionately jelking. And so I know you in the comments right now are going to comment, I've jelked for years to derp and nothing's ever happened to me and I got bigger, and that's fine. And that's good for you, man. But please don't jelk, guys. And here's another urologist telling you not to do that. But y'all don't want to hear me, you just want to dance.
Y'all don't want to hear me, you just want to dance.
So the safest way for length is a traction device. So you can buy traction devices online. These are sort of devices that slowly extend your penis with a little bit of pressure over time, and they are meant to be very minimal tension over time. So there's some that you'll use 6 hours a day, like go to sleep with them. There's some that you can do 30 minutes twice a day, but they are a commitment, right? You have to be like doing it a lot.
So guys, I agree with her 100% here. People always ask me, what's the best way for length? And I think she's saying like the safest, but in reality, the only thing that we actually have measured data for is actually traction devices. And a lot of that data started out because of people using it for Peyronie's disease, trying to straighten the curve is where traction devices started. And so I think the most, what we say in the biz, board safe answer is to actually use a traction device, but that doesn't mean that other methods don't work. I do think we have the most data to show that it's not only safe, but it's also effective with traction devices. But I do think the general principle of prolonged time under tension of your penile tissue will lead to lengthening over time in basically any modality that you choose to use. There are two things to keep in mind when it comes to safety. Number one is that if you're using a noose extender where there's like a silicone strap that goes underneath the glands of the head of the penis, that can actually cause nerve damage, and that is not safe. And also if you use something that's called a vacuum cap, where you put a little basically cap on the top of the penis and it actually like sucks up pressure to stay on there, that can lead to blisters. So there are those two kind of injuries that can happen even when using an extender.
They do work, and they've been shown to increase penile length by about 2 centimeters when you've done it for
2 centimeters?
Yeah, for prolonged periods of time, for months on end, then you will see an increase. And that's on average, right? So some may see a little more, some may see a little less, but that's generally what they've seen in the studies. And so, yeah, I think there are ways to do it, but it's a commitment, right? You have to be disciplined, you have to keep doing it, and you have to, is that what you really want to spend your time doing, right? And that's fine if you do. No judgment, by all means, but I think that's probably the safest.
So guys, I can't emphasize enough that when it comes to any sort of enlargement technique, the key is going to be consistency. Regardless of the technique that you use, it's consistency. And I love that she emphasizes this because some of these studies do have guys using traction devices for 6 to 8 hours per day. Now, she says the growth is about 2 centimeters, but you have to understand that on some of these studies, the 2 centimeters in growth, which I would say is a bit above average, happened over the span of at least 6 months, if not more. And so this is the long game, if you'll pardon the pun. But the point is, I think guys like to try to overcomplicate PE, and everybody is looking for the next latest and greatest thing or something that's going to speed up gains, whether it be heat, shockwave therapy, PRP, all these different kind of bends and contortions and all these different things. Oh no, you need to take a straw and rub that on your D on both sides before you start doing PE, and that's what's going to really get you gain. I mean, like all that stuff is fine, okay? I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying there's not science behind it in some of the cases. But the key is consistency, guys.
Now, there's other things that are available. There's surgical options. There's, basically surgical options are available to lengthen and enhance girth. Girth, probably the safest is to do fillers, like women get fillers on their face. There's the same sort of hyaluronic acid fillers that you can get injected into the penis, but they don't last forever. They're like 18 months or so, and they'll dissolve.
So, guys, I don't know whether this is just she was nervous and misspoke or whatnot, but guys, there are no surgical procedures that are going to increase the size of the length of the erect penis, okay? There are no surgical procedures that we know of right now that are going to increase the length of the erect penis, okay? And so there's a suspensory ligament surgery where you actually cut the suspensory ligament so your penis gives the illusion of kind of hanging lower so it looks like it's longer, but it does not increase the erect penile length. And so I think that is like low-key kind of dangerous that she implies that there are surgeries that can make you longer when it comes to erect length. Now, what she says about hyaluronic acid fillers, I think she's spot on. Now, there is a procedure where you can have hyaluronic acid injected into the head of your penis for 2 reasons. The first thing is that it's for guys that have premature ejaculation to decrease the sensitivity in that area. So that's one reason to do it, but it actually does increase penile length in that way and actually erects penile length. I know Hink, you're contradicting yourself. But it's because the head of the penis actually goes from being basically this tall to being this tall. And so there's a minimal improvement in erect length, but it's only because the glans is actually thicker, basically.
We don't have a ton of data, but I wouldn't inject anything else. So there are permanent fillers. People have in jail have injected all sorts of things in their penis, all sorts of things, which please don't inject your penis with anything. But if you're going to, if you are very intent on doing it and you've sort of talked to your doctor about it and it's not like a psychological issue that needs, attention from a psychologist, because there is what we call small penis anxiety, right? People who really feel body dysmorphia, like there's something wrong with them. And that requires, but should have attention from a psychologist so you can work on your thoughts around it. But, if you don't have a dysmorphia and you just want a bigger penis, I think that's the safest option in terms of an intervention.
I have an entire video about breaking down penile enlargement surgeries. And in those videos, I talk about the different risks associated with other types of fillers. So for example, there are some people that are injecting, they literally will do liposuction fat and then inject it into the penis. There are case reports published of people dying because they inject the fat into one of the blood vessels and the fat goes up to your heart and you have a heart attack and die. It's called a fat embolism and it can be lethal. Same thing with silicone. There's case reports of people that have injected silicone, and the silicone, they have a gnarly reaction and damn near have to have their penis amputated because of some sort of staph infection and whatnot. So please be careful and please don't inject anything into your penis, honestly, at all. Well, whatever, talk to your doctor, see if it's right for you. But I would highly advise against any kind of fillers outside of hyaluronic acid as well.
There are some, people who will use vacuum erection devices or penis pumps. There's no evidence in the literature that this actually results in enhanced girth, but some people report that they notice that. Again, I think it's all temporary when you're using these traction devices and pumps. I don't know that you're going to have a lasting effect, but I don't know. We haven't looked at it in the long term in terms of scientific data. It's only anecdotes, what patients tell us and what we see.
Once again, I'm a clown in a mask. She's a board certified urologist. Who am I to possibly disagree with her, okay? But that being said, I do disagree with her. First of all, I don't agree. Like, you can't just flip-flop and say between like a vacuum erection device and a penis pump, because a vacuum erection device is a specific type of device. It does create negative pressure, but then you have to take it off and put a constriction ring in place to trap the blood in place that's used to create an artificial erection before sex. When we're actually talking about an actual pumping device, we're typically talking about negative pressure that is being used to actually like either increase blood flow to the penis, increase erection quality to the penis, or in some cases, increase size of the penis. And I don't like how she just casually kind of conflates like, oh yeah, the potential temporary like edema that you could get with pumping, which is a very temporary thing. However, you can get permanent results from pumping for sure. But to say like, oh yeah, pumping is temporary and then extenders are temporary kind of in the same sentence, like I don't think that's doing this justice, because there is actually a published paper. It's called Permanent Non-Surgical Enlargement of the Penis. And it actually does go in, it's a published trial, and it looks like at least a year out after PE, and then people that had increased their size had done so permanently, and meaning a year later, they still had their gains. And so I do think there's some evidence. It's not the best out there, but I don't like how she's just like, yeah, I mean, we don't really know. And it's like, well, maybe you haven't read those papers, but there is evidence of people continuing to have their gains. And so like, if you don't know, just say you don't know, but don't try to add like the absence of evidence equals the evidence of absence. I don't like that argument.
I wish there was a way, right? Like, women can enhance their breasts, they can get breast augmentations, but men still don't have that option, right? To enhance their genitalia if they really want to, in a permanent, meaningful way yet, in a very safe way. And I wish we had it, because I think men, just like women, should have that option if they want it, right? But at this time, like, you have one penis, it is very important. And if something happens to it, now you're stuck with that complication. And so I just think it's really important to think about that before you proceed with anything that's irreversible.
So yeah, guys, she absolutely makes a great point. You need to be very thoughtful, do your research, and make sure you're learning the safest possible ways to do that. However, I took personal offense to this comment because, so guys, I did my Hink trial, and what I proved on that trial is that 7 participants on average gained 1/2 inch in length and 1/4 inch in girth using non-surgical techniques. Now, I have not done like the 12 months later follow-up study, because we really just completed the study not long ago. But the point is that the participants on that trial, we had no serious injuries, nothing more than like mild discoloration as far as the side effects. And the guys showed that they had, I mean, and guys, there's pictures for you to see on the website. The link is in the description, okay? Go click on the website and go see, and you will see for yourself that these guys did get very clearly noticeably larger in all of the flaccid metrics and in all of the erect metrics. And so there is ways, and even if you don't look at my Hink trial, look at the P-Long trial that she was not a co-author on, but she was credited in the trial to help with recruiting. But that was a paper that also showed increase in length and girth through non-surgical techniques, including the use of an extender and pumping. And so, like, there is evidence. I really feel like she's being selective on what she's choosing to say. If that dissuades more people from doing PE, that's going to mean less people that possibly get injured from doing PE. And so, like, I get that, I understand that, but I really don't like the way she kind of concludes it. Oh, I really wish there was some way. There is ways. And in my opinion, using a penile pump is actually much safer than a procedure like breast augmentation.
I wanted to cover this later on, but we'll just do it right now since we're on the subject. I mean, size. Does size matter?
Yeah, so this comes up all the time, right? Because we are in a society where size is revered, right? Like, you will see people joking about it. You will see, I mean, even my children will joke about their penis size, and they're prepubescent boys, right? Like, where did they learn this from? We don't talk about it at home. Like, they learned it from their peers. So, this is something that's pervasive, right? People automatically assume bigger is better. The reality is, when you look at the data, people overestimate what average is. So they think average is like 6 inches erect. Average is more like 5.1 to 5.6 inches, depending on the study you look at. That's erect, not flaccid.
So guys, like, this question, oh, does size matter? Derp. Like, I mean, it's stupid. Like, if it didn't matter, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. We wouldn't be having this debate. Like, does size matter? Like, obviously it matters if we're talking about it. And obviously it matters if we're bringing up debates about it. The societal pressure regarding penile size, like, is insane, but it's like also pervasive through every aspect of life. And in a lot of ways, it really has been since kind of like the dawn of man. And so, like, the argument, does size, like, of course it does. Like, we should stop doing that. She quotes the literature. So there's a published study. It's called the Am I Normal study by Veal et al. And in that study, they proved that the actual, like, mean or the average penile size was like, yeah, it was like right at about like 5. I thought it was like 5.17, but, you know, I'm not trying to be pedantic and whatnot. But the point is that there is data showing that. I don't know where she got the 5.1. I don't know of any data that shows the average is 5.1 unless you're looking at like purely Eastern data. But in my opinion, guys, like, I think this is kind of a little bit of pandering. And I know people say, oh, Hink, you're just saying that to make people feel better. But I do think that's a little bit of an underestimation. Like, I do. But if you're talking about global average, I think that's spot on. Global average. But if you're talking about Western average, I do believe it's a bit closer to like 5.5. Okay. And they gave a range of like the normal variance in that study of somewhere between like about 4.7 all the way up to about like 5.8 is what was in that normal bell curve of variation.
And then, so fine, average is overestimated. We're really bad as human beings at estimating. So when you actually look at people who, you show them like this is a 5-inch penis, a 6-inch penis, this is a 7-inch penis. What are you estimating? So when you have like an average size penis, they tend to overestimate the size. They think it's like 6 or 7 inches, 6 inches. And then when you have a slightly smaller than average penis, you tend to underestimate. And when it's bigger, you tend to overestimate. So we're just really bad at one estimating. And a lot of men will measure their phallus, and it's so variable. How warm is it in the room? Like what, how aroused are you in that moment? Like if you're more aroused, you might be a little bit, tiny bit longer, a tiny bit girthier, right? And so it's so variable that like it's hard to say like, okay, this is my number, like this is how big I am, right? And then it's so in terms of like pleasure, right? Because I think that's what guy thinks. Oh,
I don't know. She says a lot of words, but like this is where I think that like actually having a member makes you more qualified to speak about some of these things. Like, yes, your size does fluctuate, but in general, most guys are going to talk about whatever their max length was and whatever their max girth was. I think it's kind of as simple as that. Like, oh, well, it depends on the weather. It depends on this. It depends on, like, I mean, I get it. I get it, but I don't know. I think that's kind of lame. I do think more importantly, she touches on the idea of like girl inches. Okay. Nobody knows what, I won't say nobody, very few people, unless you're like a carpenter or a hairdresser, actually know how big 5 inches is. Okay. 5 inches of visible D, I will stand on this. I think that is a very good size because at least here in America, the average, I would say is about 5.5, but the average fat pad is about 1 inch. And so really you have about 4.5 inches, maybe even 4, depending on how obese you are, of actual visible penile lengths. But the thing is, guys lie. There's been published studies showing that guys' self-reported data overestimates by about an inch, a full inch. If you're with a girl and somehow the topic of size comes up, and let's say the guy is actually 5 inches, but he tells her she's 6 inches, she's gonna think that's what 6 inches is, and therefore she's gonna think that's average. It makes me so irritated with some of these debates because people are like, oh, I've been with plenty of girls and they said the average was 8 inches. Like, how do you know she knows what 8 inches is in order to actually mean that's average? I mean, it's just some of these arguments are so asinine. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. There is a part 2 that I could make with this extended interview, and it talks about like size and actual pleasure. If you're interested in me making that video, please let me know right now in the comments. If you need to reach me for consultation, patreon.com/DocHink. If you need any equipment or supplements, links are in the description. Remember, guys, there's nothing wrong with self-improvement, but you are enough just as you are. And you are so much more than your size. All right, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace and love.
Dr. Hink got the plug on the health, yeah. Got you thinking about your wealth, yeah. In his office, no stealth, yeah. Pinnacle of that below the belt, yeah. Checks and balance, he's managing. Working miracles, no damage. Got you covered, no panicking. Steady calm. In the clinic, no vanishing. Yeah, with Doc Hink, it's the way back.